Secretary of State John Kerry testified on Tuesday that failing to strike Syria in response to a chemical weapons attack would open a Pandora's box of dangerous consequences, leaving U.S. allies questioning the worth of America's word and U.S. enemies itching to test America's resolve. The argument was part of the forceful case Kerry made for military action in Syria. During the first Capitol Hill hearing on President Obama's request for authorization for a strike, the hearing came as the administration began to earn the support of congressional leaders, though some rank-and-file members continued to show reluctance. Kerry, along with Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel, tried to sway lawmakers by claiming that the consequences of inaction would be more harmful than the consequences of a military strike. Kerry claimed the evidence is clear the Assad regime used chemical weapons and said America cannot be spectators to slaughter. "This is not the time for armchair isolationism," Kerry said, in testimony before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Gen. Martin Dempsey, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, also testified. Though tens of thousands have been killed in the course of the Syrian civil war, Obama administration officials and top-ranking lawmakers are arguing that it is now in the national security interest for the U.S. to get more involved, and punish the Assad regime for using chemical weapons. Kerry, as well as Senate Foreign Relations Committee Chairman Bob Menendez, DN.J., said that failing to do so would embolden America's enemies. Menendez said failing to act would send Iran and others the message that the U.S. is not serious about its own goals of stopping the proliferation of chemical weapons. "At the end of the day, our national security is at stake," Menendez said. Kerry said the evidence shows beyond a reasonable doubt that the Assad regime used chemical weapons. He said failing to act would increase the risk that other regimes will do the same. "Iran is hoping you'll look the other way," he said. Both Kerry and Hagel tried to assure lawmakers that any military strike would be limited and not involve boots on the ground. Kerry at one point stirred some confusion by saying he'd prefer not to include a prohibition on American troops going into Syria. He said that in the event Syria imploded or there was a threat of chemical weapons falling into the wrong hands, the U.S. and its allies would want to prevent that. "I don't want to take off the table an option that might or might not be available to the President of the United States to secure our country," he said. Kerry later clarified that there will not be American boots on the ground with respect to the civil war. The hearing comes after the Obama administration won support for a strike on Syria from top congressional leaders, including House Speaker John Boehner. Boehner, emerging from a White House meeting, said the chemical weapons attack last month has to be responded to. "The use of chemical weapons is a barbarous act. It's pretty clear to me that the United Nations is unable to take action. NATO not likely to take action. The United States for our entire history has stood up for democracy and freedom for people around the world," Boehner said. "I'm going to support the president's call for action." Minutes later, House Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi told reporters that she, too, feels Syrian President Bashar Assad has crossed a line. House Republican leader Eric Cantor said definitively that he plans to vote in favor of giving Obama authorization to use military force. Senate Democratic leader Harry Reid has also indicated his support. The only holdout appears to be Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell. He said in a written statement that while we are learning more about his plans, Congress and our constituents would all benefit from knowing more about what it is he thinks needs to be done and can be accomplished in Syria and the region. The statements backed Obama's argument that a limited missile strike on the Assad regime would be in the U.S. national security interest, by deterring the use of chemical weapons. Obama, as the White House meeting began, said he was confident he would win congressional support. Others, though, have cast the president's decision to seek congressional backing as a big risk. Some have described his chances of winning approval as 50-50. While congressional leaders and senior members of key committees are getting on board, the president faces skepticism from both liberal Democrats and some Tea Party-aligned Republicans. Others worry the administration is not going far enough with a limited strike that the administration admits is not aimed at regime change. Sen. John Cornyn, R. Texas, on Tuesday urged Obama to deliver a national address explaining to the American people why the U.S. should launch an attack. The president needs to explain in detail what vital national interests are at stake, his plan for securing these interests and a clear definition of what success looks like in Syria, he said in a written statement.